Trying not to get mad as he did before, Wanyanyekevu turned to Tavi. I will permit no man to narrow and degrade my soul by making me hate him. A quote by Booker T. Washington. Tavi turned red with anger. Fuck you and Booker T. motherfucker. Taking a deep breath, Wanyanyekevu, looking at Uday. Booker T. Washington also said, associate yourself with people of good quality, for it is better to be alone than to be in bad company. The rest of the men walked out of the woods and Wanyanyekevu tried to reason with the men. I beg of you, I understand one of you wants revenge for your brother's death, and that I understand, but let me just fight that one, and if I win, let me go in peace, but if I lose, I will accept my fate. A man walked up and stood in front of Wanyanyekevu, saying to the crowd of men, You mean to tell me this boy, pointing his finger at Wanyanyekevu, killed my brother? I would be a fool to believe such a thing. He then turned to Tavi and Uday. You two are trying to deceive me with foolishness, and for that, I will take your lives. He commanded the men to take the two and force them to kneel in front of Wanyanyekevu. You may go on your way, for these men tried to have you killed. Wanyanyekevu said to the man. I killed the men that harassed and tried to kill me, but I can honestly say it was self-defense. Tavi and Uday sighed, in relief. Achilles was my brother, the leader of these two men. If you did truly kill him, it's their responsibility to kill you first, and if they cannot do it, then I shall. Wanyanyekevu felt the heart of the two men again, and knew that Uday was not a killer. He said to the man, Mister, I don't want to fight either of them, but be on my way in peace. The man shouted, In peace? There is no peace, for my brother is dead. As sure as my name is Anatoly, someone will die today for my brother's death. Tavi rose and grabbed Uday, saying, We shall fight for the honor of Achilles and revenge your brother's death. Wanyanyekevu then stood in a stance, and in the corner of his eyes, he saw Yael standing there with his sword drawn. Wanyanyekevu turned to Yael. I shall fight in the spirit and conquer my enemies in the name of Sabaoth. The men were confused, and Tavi said, This boy speaks foolishness like a madman. Wanyanyekevu looked around and felt every man's heart, and then into Uday's eyes before turning to Anatoly. Let me quote one more foolish thing before you see death. It's by Booker T. Washington as well. A lie doesn't become truth, wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good, just because it's accepted by a majority. Wanyanyekevu bowed, quickly got into a stance, and pointed for Tavi and Uday to advance. He took the butt of his cane and knocked Uday out. Turning slightly, he cut off Tavi's hand. Tavi yelled in pain. Quickly, Wanyanyekevu turned again and severed his head from his body. Before his body hit the ground, Anatoly shouted the men's name to attack. Uwe, Klaus, Hans, Otto! The men rushed to Wanyanyekevu while he was placing his cane around his shoulder. As Wanyanyekevu grabbed Otto's arm and turned him around, he bent and broke it. While breaking his arm, Wanyanyekevu grabbed Otto by the neck and, using his body weight, spun around and broke Otto's neck. As Wanyanyekevu's feet hit the ground, he mule-kicked Klaus. Klaus bent over in pain. Wanyanyekevu rolled over Klaus's back and punched Uwe in the throat with so much force that he stood there gasping for air. Hans tried to pull out a sword, but Wanyanyekevu grabbed it before he could and killed him and Klaus with the man's own sword. As Uwe stood still holding his throat, Wanyanyekevu took Hans's sword and plunged it into Uwe's heart. Once again, Wanyanyekevu reached for his cane and fought the men quickly, gracefully, and with power. As Anatoly became furious, he shouted, Gabriel, Alexander, Afanassy, Ariv! The men approached. Wanyanyekevu killed the men almost as quickly as Anatoly called their names out. Outraged at how Wanyanyekevu killed his men, Anatoly called the rest of the men. Buvin, Chirag, Darshit, Divans, Veshan! Wanyanyekevu took out his new samurai and a few of his throwing stars this time, and they all perished at the hands of Wanyanyekevu. Wanyanyekevu, covered in blood, stood there amid the bodies he had just killed. Stepping over them, he slung his samurai, and the blood flew off the blade. He twisted the cane, and the blade withdrew back into its chamber. As he grabbed a few of his throwing stars, I have never met men with so much hatred and anger towards someone that they don't even know, one Inyekovitch said as he latched his cane to his back and walked toward a dumbfounded Anatoly. But today, you may know that I serve Sabaoth, and this boy that you called me shall take your life, not because I'm mad, but that you are evil and Sabaoth hates evil men. Anatoly took out a pistol and raised it to shoot one Inyekovitch, but one Inyekovitch fell to the ground, flipped, and grabbed a shield of one of the men that laid on the ground. Hiding behind the shield until the shooting stopped, one Inyekovitch grabbed a star and threw it into the man's hand, making him drop the weapon. Anatoly shouted in pain, "You motherfucker!" One Inyekovitch throws another star into his throat. Grabbing his throat, Anatoly started choking on his blood. One Inyekovitch picked up Anatoly's pistol and shot him twice in the head. Afterward, he dropped the gun and walked over to Uday and shook him until he awoke.